Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you all for tuning in live, listening to the vault. Welcome to the vault. Welcome to the replay. If you're listening to this in the replay, and if you're listening live, thank you for listening live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every single Tuesday, we do our best to bring high quality content episodes. This is episode 219, Saving versus Protecting. And just really thankful and excited that we get to do this episode. It's actually an episode been wanting to do for a while now, and just wanting to fit it into the schedule. We're doing our best to bring Cornell the Trader back on because we really want to do a high quality episode. We got a ton of people right now requesting for a trading webinar. Usually around about $500, but we definitely just want to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to do our best to get him back on. He's just literally doing what we said we were going to do. We were going to grow. Right now, the marketplace is just on fire right now in the marketplace. If you all don't know, things are booming right now in the marketplace. Whether you all know it or not, we know that there's a lot of doom and gloom on the TV, but nevertheless, in the private sector, growth is just happening right now. Investments are happening. Real estate is booming. People are buying houses. People are moving right now because of the times and what's going on. So, whether that's on the investor side or just even the consumer side, we see there is a demand, and building has not stopped. We've seen building continuously keep continue going on. So in the real estate sector, so we definitely just always appreciate everyone that listens in live or listen to replay, and just do our best to bring the best, highest quality content focused on just helping individuals and families move forward with their situation. So we're definitely going to do that. Today's episode is 219, Saving versus Protecting. This is a quality episode because when we talk about saving versus protecting, we have to distinguish these two. A lot of times, a lot of people come to the vault. We even encounter a lot of people that have savings, and savings, from what we've learned from Robert Kiyosaki being a mentor, is that saving is for losers. And we do want to make that very, very clear. Saving has not gotten any of us anywhere. In the private sector, we know that money is always meant to be moving. That's why it's called currency. It is something that is electrical. It's something that whether people say it's digital or not, the currency itself, there's still high value in it moving, always occurring interest, and it's so apropos for protecting because when we talk about protecting and preserving, one of the first ways that you protect capital is by putting it in the correct position. And so many families reach out to the vault and they're like, oh, we want to, pretty much say they're going to protect their family, but they're sitting on their savings. You know how many people have contacted the vault and said, oh, we have $50,000 in our IRA. We have $100,000 in IRA. If Trustee Training is not $100,000, what are you risking? And so people are putting their quote unquote savings at risk. People are not protecting their wealth. And so when we talk about protecting, we've always said trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. And one of the ways that you implement that strategy is by investing in your private education, enrolling in trustee training, because it is about protecting. The way that you insulate yourself uh, inside of your financial plan is by educating yourself to implement and hire the right people to protect the wealth, not to save the wealth, but to protect the wealth. Not only to protect it, but preserve it. Because there is a thing called inflation. So one of the first things you learn when you come to trustee training, ladies and gentlemen, we pull out whether it's silver or gold, and we say, okay, so many people say there's no such thing as real money, but then we pull out the real money. So many people say, oh, the money's not backed by anything. How is it not backed by anything when the United States still sells United States mint gold and silver? So we get rid of these ignorant thought processes and put people in more of an educated position. And we share food for thought because what's shared over the internet or what's shared in the public is to confuse people to not move forward with their education. And we know we said a lot even so far in this episode, but so many people reach out and say, oh, I have a savings. or oh, I have an IRA, or oh, I have a Roth, or oh, I have some type of they even have real estate, and they're sitting on the savings that they've put in place. But what happened to protecting it? So this episode is aimed to converse and talk about the protection of assets, not just saving of assets, because assets are meant to grow. But if the asset is not protected, it's all for naught. So many people come to the vote and say, well, who needs a trust? Someone that has something worth protecting, not someone that has something worth saving, someone that has something worth protecting. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about protection, asset preservation, asset growth, and passing it along in the correct position. People have come to the vault and say, oh, we have this money saved, but the money's in their name. So it doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter how much money they have in their name. Why? Because it's not protected. And so this episode clarifies some of the things that people can do, families can do, which is not only just invested in their education, but what are the entities? What are the things to protect their savings in? Ladies and gentlemen, there is we all know that the FDIC, which is the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation, is a company that is to protect central banks and banks from actually insuring the money and making sure that people that are considered to be unaccredited investors, ladies and gentlemen, people that are, what do they call them? Unsophisticated investors. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just go ahead and break it down for the private side and how the private sector looks. So, the private sector says, okay, first of all, when you're in the private sector, you're growing from an accredited investor perspective, accredited investor position. What does that mean? That means that this party or whatever individual is generating $250,000 a year, and they've been doing that consecutively for 3 years in a row. And there's some other rules that you all can read when you Google accredited investor. But ladies and gentlemen, this is how unprotected people are on the public side. Supposedly, there's protection on the public side. If it was really protection on the public side, you all can go look up a term called a bank bail-in. See, right now, with this whole pandemic going on in the United States or in the world, there's a run on the bank for coins already. We shared this with people in the public already. We already said there was going to be a run on the bank. Why? Because people were sitting in line for real money. They were sitting in line, period, for dollars. And now the bank is instituting new policies. Well, if you guys give us some of your change, we'll give you money back. Really? They're looking to steal people's wealth. That's all it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. What coins are you turning in? Are you turning the copper coins? Or are you turning in the ones that don't mean much? See, knowing the difference between real money and no money is the difference. Or knowing the difference between real money and paper money is a difference. So, what happens when the bank asks you to bail yourself in first? And they're not going to ask. You're going to be compelled to do so. Just like the coins. Because there's a coin shortage, supposedly. Ladies and gentlemen, where does money come from? Oh, it comes from the government. Right, they just print it. So how can they run out of it? How can the banks run out of it if the government's printing it? See, these are the idiosyncrasies that are told to the public to keep them dumb, deaf, and blind. To keep them on savings. Well, let's continue about the savings aspect. Ladies and gentlemen, there were countries that were at a negative savings rate. That means they weren't saving enough. So, why do you hear a thing called quantitative easing now? See, the government is aware of their population and what's going on. They have a good, strong pulse on the population. What makes you think that you won't go through a bank bail-in? Oh man, a bank bail-in. I never heard of that. We heard about the gov bailing out people. But let's go ahead and bring up the definition for the bank bail-ins. Because no one's ever heard of the bank bail-in. All they heard was a bank bailout. But these are easy terms you can find on the internet after you do your research. A bank bail-in and a bank bailout are both designated to prevent the complete collapse of a failing bank. Ladies and gentlemen, are the banks first? The banks came out and said in this early aspect of the pandemic, they said they were doing good. Then they came out with positive earnings that looked too bad, and now they're back in a position where right now they're saying we don't want the government money because we don't want to have to pay it back like they did last time. The banks paid the money back last time. But what happened now? There's a supposed shortage in coins in circulation. What makes you think? If you've seen it all, you haven't seen it all. These terms have been put in place already before people have ever even thought about them. So, with the bank bail-in, the bank uses the money of its unsecured creditors. Hold on. You are an unsecured creditor at a bank already? Hold on, you're not a secure creditor, but what happened to the FDIC? The money that you're saving in the bank, was it secured or unsecured? It was supposed to be insured. No, these are legal definitions. These are definitions you can look up on the internet for yourself. The bank uses the money of an unsecured creditor, including depositors. Or you're a depositor, right? With your savings account. And a bondholder to restructure their capital so they can stay afloat. In effect, the bank is allowed to convert its debt into equity. So, people don't know banking too well, and that's unfortunate because you went to public school. Most of us went to public school. And public school doesn't educate us on social security numbers, law, or banking. But the internet does. When people deposit money, it creates a debt on the company's books. Why? Because they're supposed to owe you the money if it goes under. But not in the case of a bail-in. Why? Because the bank uses the money of you, the unsecured creditor, from your savings plan. This is why it's not encouraged. Including depositors and bondholders to restructure their capital so they can stay afloat. In effect, the bank is allowed to convert debt into equity. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear about this new term called shareholder capitalism, don't you have an equitable state in capitalism now? You were bailed into that position. The corporations are bailing themselves into that position. The bank is allowed to convert its debt into equity for the purpose of increasing its capital requirements. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when people are not in a position of education and they don't know the difference between saving and protecting. People think just because I have my money in the bank, it's supposed to be protected. By who? The FDIC. The obvious risk to bank depositors is the possibility of losing a portion of their deposits. Oh, really? Now you see why wealthy people don't put their money in the bank in an improper position, such as their personal name? However, depositors have the protection of the FDIC, ensuring each bank account up to $250,000. Banks are required to use only the deposits in excess of $250,000 protection. Oh, really? So your money's just going to sit there, right? Ladies and gentlemen, who do you think is taking a bullet in life nowadays? The big guy or the small guy? The guy that's saving his money right now, they literally just lost it because if they weren't working, they just lost their savings. They used their savings to do what it was supposed to do. Pay for their lifestyle. The lifestyle that most people were living above the hog. Most people were living above the hog with their lifestyles. They said the average American didn't have more than $2,000 in their savings and couldn't be able to pay the rent 3 months. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been in the pandemic for over 3 months. And now we're getting to where people are turning into beggars. They're asking the government for money. Are they saving or are they protecting their position? There's no such thing as free. So, saving versus protecting. This doesn't need to be a long episode, ladies and gentlemen. This is something we go over in Trustee Training very frequently when it comes to saving. It's for losers. How can you save money faster than it's depreciating? Hold on, what do you mean it's depreciating? It's depreciating not just based off the values of other currencies going up and people being more economically, uh, what do we call them? Economically powerful countries themselves, people in those countries. Not only that, but people are losing based off of inflation. Not just because other people are competing, but people are losing based off of inflation. They're printing more money, right? Hold on. So the money you were saving is actually worth less now than it was when you first originally saved it. This is why it's superfluous or a waste of time to get into these public pension plans, Roth IRAs and IRAs. Why? Because how are you saving money when the taxes are going to be higher in the future? Bottom line, period. How are you saving when the money you are saving is getting hit with inflation and you're going to end up paying more taxes on it in the future? The taxes are going to be higher in the future. Taxes are going to be higher tomorrow than they are today. That's a fact. So the position of protecting, how does protection look? What they say, in God we trust. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Protection comes from no ownership. Ownership incurs liability. When you are saving, do you have it in your name? Yeah, I have it in my name. So how is it protected? If it's own nothing, control everything. But people want to continue with this old thought process. They contact the vault. They say, oh, I got some savings. And they're wondering, should they protect it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's the difference between a public and a private education. In the private, we're always focused on a protected position from the beginning. Nothing less and nothing more. It's got to be protected first. Own nothing, control everything. Not own everything and still control it. We can get into the insurance. We can talk about that. Why? Because last time we checked, it's compound interest in insurance. People might talk about money, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there's no real money. Ladies and gentlemen, insurance companies have been around for over 500 years. Sorry to inform you of the truth. 500 years. The central banking system that you see in place pretty much throughout the world and in the States has not been in place for 500 years. That already lets you know that contract protection is ruling the world. You protect your dollars to preserve your dollars or whatever currency you're utilizing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about private education. This is about educating yourself and your family. So you're not at the end of this pandemic saying, well, we got to go back to work now and work for a money that really, it didn't gain value. It may give you purchasing power compared to other countries. But at the same time, things are changing, ladies and gentlemen. Asset protection is the same as it was day one. Own nothing, control everything. That's what it came down to. Putting it in the correct position is how you protect it, not sitting it in a savings account. Americans, if you all are listening around the world, they're not encouraged to save in America. Why? They have a new online accounts nowadays that pay some dividends. Think about it. How much is the dividend in your savings account? What is the interest rate that you're earning in your savings account? People say, what about protection? Ladies and gentlemen, isn't savings supposed to protect you from a rainy day? Yes. But what happens? It's not earning any interest. Compound interest is how you protect it because you're hedging against inflation. You're hedging against the potential losses. Savings is not a hedge against potential losses. The money's not even moving, it's just sitting there. And this is what we have to bring to people's attention so they can start having these conversations and talking to people about it. Trust Christian, know not to control everything. Just want to thank everyone that's listening live from Cali, from Mississippi. If you all want to feel free to type into the chat, feel free. Questions or as well, we can do some questions and even where you're listening from. That's the difference between savings and preventive care. Protection. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. And we're excited to share this with you. It doesn't need to be a long winded episode, it's just an episode to talk about the truth, which is most people have been taught to save money. Money cannot be saved, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing to save. It's an asset. Assets are meant to grow. They're not meant to sit in some bank account arbitrarily and not have a definitive plan and not even give more than a 2 to 3 to 5% return. Even when it's in a stock market, it's considered an investment if it's just sitting there. You're trying to protect it against what? The bank's not giving you your just due. Ladies and gentlemen, banks have no vested interest in the money sitting in the bank. They have no vested interest. But they sure know how to make money off of people's savings. So the savings works like this. You end up putting your money in the savings account, and then when it's time for you to borrow some money, does the bank give you your money? No, they give you their money with an interest rate on it. Saving versus protecting. What happens in the private? You're enrolled in the private family banking system, where the money that you're borrowing now comes from the family. So it has to come back to the family. That's a protected position. So many people say, well, Trust Christian, how do we get involved? You can email christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, that's christian@trustchristian.com. Otherwise, you can just move forward. And so many have come and say, oh, we know people that can do it. Great. You can feel free to join them. We're not here to do the sales job. We're here to make sure that the families we work with, the partners we work with, are all in a protected position. Bottom line, period. Protection. Asset protection leads to asset development and asset management. But asset protection comes first. Savings is never in our picture. We're focused on asset growth, not asset sitting still. And the money that people are utilizing is depreciating every single day that we speak. Not because it's not on the gold standard, because you can literally take those dollars, you could take whatever root, you could take any currency in different countries, not all of them, and do what? Make money off. I mean, literally trade it in for gold and silver. So it's not like the dollar bills or whatever cash flow system paper notes that people have don't have value. That's why we could easily do this episode. Savings is gold and silver. Hard collectible art, jewelry, cars. That's savings. Why? You're never supposed to touch it. Never. Why would you touch what you're saving? Well, it's saved for a rainy day. Well, that's called the rainy day fund. But until that rainy day, savings is to be compounding interest. Bottom line, compound interest. That's supposed to be one of the 8 wonders of the world. Let Einstein tell it. Compound interest. But what happened? People got caught up in the, man, I just need to get something right now. There is a big difference between saving and protecting. How do you protect the wealth? Protect the wealth by making sure you're in the right asset class. Are paper notes really assets? No. Why? Because it's a depreciating asset. It's just as bad as real estate. In real estate, people write off depreciation. So how is it an appreciating asset? And that's why most people don't make money off real estate. It's because they don't know the laws for it. And not to say you need to know all the laws, but they don't know the laws for it. And they don't understand that depreciation is where real estate is the most beneficial. It's a tax write-off. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, we know people that create easements because of that. They just go get land and they try to create tax holes for themselves. Tax shelters. That's what people do in the private sector. They're not focused on saving money. They're looking for tax write-offs. They're focused on generating wealth because they understand that the money's not meant to be sitting still. Ever. So they're not focused on saving the money. They're focused on growing and protecting it. Protecting it and growing it. That's what's going on in the private, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we deal with our families and the private sector about. We're always going to make it a point to at least come out and answer some of the questions that we have because people are saving money. They've tried to save money, but it wasn't in a protected position. We got families right now that have come to the vault. Their families are in shambles. Why? Because their family member that has passed has left money to certain specific members. But guess what? Good old James Brown, after 15 years of of mitigation and litigation, 15 years since 2006 when James Brown died, the famous singer, his estate is finally being settled out by someone from a court because it wasn't in a protected position for the family members. This is why you see people say you don't give money directly to your children. You don't give them the savings. Why? Because it's protected. It has to be protected. Why? Because we die. Entities don't. Artificial beings don't die. That's why you'll never give the money directly to your children. Because we die. Entities don't. And when we say die, we're not going and looking to be morbid. And we're not talking about from the spiritual realm where energy never dies. We're talking about your flesh and body. At one point, it's going to go back to dirt. Bottom line. So we don't need to hear the variation of mindsets. We're talking facts and figures. Let's go ahead and answer some questions. Feel free to type some questions into the chat. This is always an excellent time to get your free consultation questions. Today we are talking about saving versus protecting, and we're always talking about business and money over at the vault. And we're gonna talk. We could even talk about people right now that are participating in these so-called, hey, as soon as I pay for $1 or when I make a purchase, if it's any extra change left over on the round it up and give it to this so-called third-party company and they're gonna invest the money for me. Ladies and gentlemen, that comes from a lack of financial education. No one can save any particular one financially. Bottom line, it's a do-it-yourself project. But people are acquiescing, giving up their protection. Your protection is you staying within you. People wanted to, the government, they're going to give me some money because they saved it for me. If the Social Security Administration trust is set up and you're the beneficiary, beneficiaries don't put anything into the trust. Grantors do. So this is how you know the conversation in the public is just to confuse people, to keep them dumb, deaf, and blind. Are there any particular types of specific years we should be cautious when investing in precious metals? Great question. And once again, feel free to type any questions like this into the chat because they're very welcome. This was a great question. Are there any particular types or specific years? Generally, we like to collect pennies before 73. Because you'll see them that they still have solid copper in them before 73. It could be just try to look at it and as well Google it. Those are always great just to kind of find out if that year. But anything in the right before the 70s or 80s, could be 83 at the latest, where penny still had the copper, and as well once again. Any particular types or yes, numismatic. Once again, you can talk to your local coin dealer. They'll let you know which ones are confiscatable or non-confiscatable, and specifically the years, because you don't always have to go back to 1933 or 1913 when it comes to gold and silver. A lot of people try to even get the collectors assets and things of that nature and mentors, and that's when you go through our program we just say get what's considered non-confiscatable. Bottom line, period. It's not about necessarily the year, and it's not necessarily even about particularly the type, but there is particularly the type because ultimately, as long as the gov says they're not going to confiscate it, that's the most important part. Bottom line, period. This is an excellent next question right here. And this is what happens when you come into the private, where you can literally do what the next question is. well, they kind of worded it wrong, but we're gonna interpolate what they were trying to say, because we understand that people type fast and spell check. How basically can you make money off of gold and silver, ladies and gentlemen? Did you not know that you can lease your gold and silver? You didn't know that, and lose no value but only gain cash flow, ladies and gentlemen. There are people that are leasing their gold and silver to private institutions, private organizations, and even governments. They are leasing it. But oh, no, no. They don't teach that in the public, do they? No, because it's not a public knowledge. It's a high net worth. It's a private sector knowledge. So even when you have the gold and silver, precious metal, you can rent it, lease it to institutions. Name one of them. Insurance companies. Hold on. You can do that? Ladies and gentlemen, just because you don't know something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yes, people such as yourself are in the private and they are leasing their gold and silver to institutions. They're renting it. That's what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody said, how you do that? You got to invest in your private education. You can get your consultation, Christian at Trust Christian, and we can provide elements of that information with you all. Once again, that comes from being in a certain position financially. Obviously, you already have gold and silver and connecting with those individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, we always encourage you all to go talk to your local coin dealer, not just a pawn shop dealer, but more of a gold and silver dealer, and ask them, do they have any type of leasing program where you purchase it? Not you, but maybe the family purchases it, and then as well it leases it back to organizations. Bottom line, period. So we appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in live. This isn't to tout that we have information that most people don't have. It's actually to stimulate thought for you to do the research for your family. Because when you get into private and say, well, how do I do it? How do you know if you're not getting ripped off? It requires a significant amount of due diligence. But is it possible? Of course. There are people right now that purchase gold and silver and don't hold the physical asset. They have a paper contract. You have a paper contract. Well, where's the gold and silver being held? It's being held in a depository. You can contact depositories that hold gold and silver. But if you're not in the correct position and you're doing it in your name, what happens when you make money off it? You just made yourself tax liable. You just made yourself lawsuit liable. Ladies and gentlemen, the information, of course, is for people that are going private. It's not made for people that want to stay in the public. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They want to save money to riches. You can't save money to riches. You have to protect it. You have to preserve it. You have to grow it. You have to pass it along. That's it. It's a lifelong mission. Appreciate everyone for tuning in live from Las Vegas. Shout out to Las Vegas. Always appreciate the hot place. It's very hot in Vegas. Appreciate Vegas for sure. Great place. They call it the Silver State still, from what we're aware of. They have some reserves out there, and still to this day, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in places like that, just because the public is not knowing of it, it's one of those places that people are literally doing business in those areas. They're doing business in those areas, leasing gold and silver to depositories. We can share that much with you in the public, but it requires due diligence and it requires protection. You have to be in the correct position. These companies aren't looking to do business with individuals. They're looking to do business with families that are in the correct position. Bottom line, period. So that does mean you're aware of contract. Why? Because if you're going to lease it, if you're going to rent the gold and silver, that means what? That means that you're going to have a contract in place. And you don't want to be like Nick Cannon saying that they ripped you off after you got money. So we're not going to go there. This isn't about you putting something in there just to get some money. This is legacy. See, when you come to the vault, it's about legacy. It's not about saving. Think about how many of your family members, they passed you along some money. Taxes got you, or did they pass it along to you in the correct position? We know people right now, their families had a will in place, and the family still is arguing over money. This is things that divide families up because they didn't protect the money. They just wanted to save it. Oh, I'm going to save it and give it to my grandchildren. I'm going to save it and give it to my kids. They never took the time to research the protection. Own nothing, control everything is the protection. You get set up so you can preserve it. Because it's losing value every single day sitting in the bank account. The gold and silver puts families in a position where you can lease it to governments. They say it's a shortage of gold and silver. Right now, if there's a shortage of coins, such as pennies, nickels, dimes, whatever, what makes you think there's not going to be future shortages of these assets? Ladies and gentlemen, we sat in a room with some pretty powerful people, and they sat there and said, guess what? It doesn't matter if you get gold and silver, because if you don't know how powerful and how valuable it is, what the precious metals are, you're going to lose it faster than you acquired it. Especially in times like this. People right now are depending on their savings. Why? Because they weren't protected. We're here for questions once again. This is your free consultations. We're dealing with savings and protection. We appreciate the questions coming through right now. Next question is, can you speak on those that work and have 401ks that they can't touch it or they're losing money hand over fist? Once again, we actually right now have talked to a few financial advisors right now that talked about people not taking penalties right now for taking it out. Think about it. Or certain penalties being lifted for right now, because think about it. If you're getting free money from the government, there's probably quite a few rules that are being bent and changed right now for people's benefit. So why not put the money in a position where it's truly protected? The 401k is a government-sponsored program. They're telling you don't have to pay taxes on money you made this year or in the past. How? Because they know in the end, they're going to get you. They already know this. We sat on the phone with adults, ladies and gentlemen. Adults. That means they're over 18. And what did they say? We asked them a simple question. Do you think taxes are going to be higher in the future than today? Not one of them. It was over 5 individuals on the call. Not one of them said that the taxes were going to be higher in the future. Why? That's called having a public school education. Bottom line, of course they're going to be higher in the future. So why not call a financial advisor right now and say, hey, I need to put my stuff in a more protected position. That means own nothing, control everything. Why? Because if I own it, as soon as I take it out for my retirement, I'm going to get hit with a higher tax liability. So why not call a financial advisor and talk to them about that? That's what the vault is here for, to spur the creative, dynamic conversation about money, about business, because it's not personal. Savings is personal. It's in your personal name. When it's in a business, it's protected. That's why corporations can go bankrupt. And the families or whoever that was so-called in control of it can walk away. Because they're protected. Why do people go into this thing called a limited liability corporation? Because it's to protect them. But people come to the vault and they're unknowing that it's limited. It's not full protection, but it's limited. It says it in its title. Limited liability. Corporations. That's why you see most corporations nowadays, they don't even have the owner on the title of the documents. They're called founders. They're called CEOs. CEO doesn't mean that you are the owner. It says Chief Executive Officer. But oh no, what happened? There was a misinformation that was given out. CEO meant that he's the owner. Not at all, ladies and gentlemen. Most major corporations have a CEO. That means they're the Chief Executive Officer. That means that the owners are truly protected. Bottom line, you don't save your way to wealth. You protect your way to wealth. You preserve the wealth. It's easier to grow it from that position. Do you think any wealthy person, Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Robert Smith, ladies and gentlemen, they can be sued at any moment out of their assets? They have money. You think they waited till they got the money to protect it? Or do you think they were protected so they can preserve it and then they could grow it so they can pass it along? And are they passing it along to their children directly? No. That's how you know they're not saving it. Savings is for losers. You can't save something that's depreciating. You can't. It's used for a specific reason with those accounts. You can count them as a loss, but most people don't know how to utilize it as a loss, just like real estate. They don't know how to use it as a loss, such as depreciation. That's considered an asset wealth generating tool. Depreciation. That's how you protect your wealth. It's by having assets that you can utilize for protection. Ladies and gentlemen, you can acquire debt. So why save? You can purchase someone else's debt. That's an asset. That's how you protect wealth, by buying debt. Companies buy debt. People buy debt. Oh, I never heard that concept. Why would I buy debt? How valuable is debt? Well, how valuable is it sitting in a savings account and losing money? Whether it's through inflation or depreciation. That's why we can say it's for losers. There's no benefit in playing that game. The only benefit is to protect it. Whatever you have is to protect it. So many people say, well, who needs to be in trust? Whoever has something worth protecting, not saving. Because the trustee is to grow the assets, not sit on them. Like the mother hen, the golden goose egg. It's supposed to hatch at one point, to produce for the families in perpetuity, for generations. This is why you can say, well, not all families, they take wealth from one generation to the next. Clearly, you want to know why? Because the family members, the successor trustees, they walked into a position and they didn't focus on protecting, preserving, and growing and passing along the wealth as the previous generation did. They got in and they said, okay, we're going to take a little bit of money or whatever money's in here, and we're going to start saving part of it, and we're going to invest part of it. Now remember, there's a system to maintaining wealth in the family from one generation to the next. We already discussed what that is. And savings is not on the list. You don't save the collectible art, you insure it. See? But it's not in your name. It's in the correct position. Think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, we see a major amount of divorces going on in the public right now. Robert De Niro, Dr. Dre, these people, are they in a protected position? Their assets are being exposed right now. All they did was save money. Now, sometimes people show you what they want to show you. But, ladies and gentlemen, when Steve Jobs died, there was no argument over the estate. There were multiple trusts in place, multiple foundations in place. And his wife stood in place and was just a trustee. They had trustees in place. They didn't save the money from Pixar and Apple. They didn't save anything. He just said, hey, before I die, I'm going to get smart and I'm going to protect it. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're talking about elite, you're talking about people that say, I know the tax code better than anybody. Donald Trump is one of them. He makes sure that the money is protected because he knows people want to sue him. Why? Because he doesn't want his wealth to be liable for what he says. Hold on. Let's go over that concept again. Because you can be held liable for what you say. That's true. You are liable for what you say. But what about your money? See, the money's either going to pay for your liabilities or the money's always going to be growing like an asset. You can separate those things. You can separate your business wealth from your family wealth. Have it in a protected position to grow separately, not save it. Oh, Houston. Shout out to Houston. Appreciate Houston big time for listening live. Always appreciate that. Once again, we're welcoming questions for this episode, saving versus protecting. We know a bunch of people listen to the episodes, and sometimes people even contact us, say they don't have money for the consultation saved up, so they got to contact us back. So we still keep doing episodes because people want to get questions answered, and we're here to serve. So feel free to type any questions that you have into the chat. Once again, this is saving versus protecting. And this is what it's all about. It's about protecting your wealth. Once again, if you come from the public side, everything's in your name. Own this, own that. What happens when you own it and somebody sues you? It's going to be rather hard to save it if you lose. Bottom line, period. But when you have nothing in your name and it's protecting, it's protected, there's a different conversation that's being had. So we appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Once again, protection even comes from the people that are getting married. You don't need to worry about what's in that other person's savings account. It's all about protecting what you come into the relationship with. And that's fair and square. Bottom line. We're going to go ahead and ask for any more questions in the chat. Otherwise, we just appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Houston, Vegas, Cali. What's that? Mississippi? Where is that? Mississippi, Cali. Definitely appreciate you all. We got another question. Just watched a video about how to make your single member into a multi-member by way of another business. That's great. Appreciate you for tuning in live and actually stating that I am well versed. That is a perfect episode for people that want to own nothing, control everything. Clearly, if something is majority owned by you, then you're the saver. You're trying to save whatever you can when it comes through. But what happens when someone sues you? Did you own the business? People own the business. So they're saving. They're going to try to save it. We'll give you an insider trick when we talk about that. Savings is you go grow the company and then you spend all of it or you put it in a savings account. What happened to protecting the company's greatest asset through Keyman Insurance? See, you protect it with the entity, limited liability, C Corp, yada, 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 trust, foundation, whatever. But then what happened to preserving it? You didn't jump to savings yet. You preserved it. Keyman Insurance. You preserved the company. Cross purchase agreements if you have multiple partners inside of the business. So if something happens to one partner, the other family, the other partner doesn't have to come out of pocket. It's already a policy in place. This is what we know and learn in the private sector. It is all day, every day. These aren't things that you can say, oh, well, you're never going to learn it or it's so hard to acquire. No, once you're in private trustee training, we can go over that easy because that's where it's happening at. In the public side, why didn't your lawyer tell you about Keyman Insurance? Why didn't your insurance agent tell you about Keyman Insurance? Oh, man, you don't have enough money. You could do minimum policies. You dictate how much you're worth and the company pays it. Oh, no. People don't know about that, though. That's how you protect the company. So if the company goes under because you have to go down for critical terminal illnesses, think about how many of you all are sole members of your company and women, single parents, and they don't have Keyman Insurance on their company, no matter how big or how small it is. How many of you all have Keyman Insurance on your company, on the company? So if something happens to you terminally because you have children, your children will either be able to step in because the company now has money to keep funding the company. Bottom line, what about the insurance policy to take care of you when you go down in the company? What's the point of saving money when your children can receive a tax-free life insurance policy? What is the point of saving? Savings is for losers. Protecting the assets is what it's all about. And if you're the sole owner, sole member, you're the greatest asset to the company right now. It is imperative that you get protection on you as the so-called owner, as the so-called controller, as the so-called manager of the company. It's imperative. But with a public education, people will piddle paddle around and not put themselves in a position to win. They're playing to lose. Savings is playing not to lose. Protecting, you already know what's going to happen. We're going to die. Something's going to happen to us. And guess what? We're protected. And you don't own anything. You control it. So you're even more freer. So when something does happen to you, unforeseen or accidentally, guess what? There's protection on you and on the company that you work so hard to build single-handedly. That's the difference between a public and private education. We welcome you all to the vault. Trust Christian, own not to control everything. We appreciate everyone that listened in live, listen to replay, and shares every episode. If you guys want to get the consultation, it's always best to go back and listen to the episodes that are relevant to your situation. Whether it's LLC, C Corp, charity, whatever it is. And then reach out and get your consultation. Not just come on the line to get a price of trustee training. It's about you all saying, I need questions answered. How do we move forward from there? We got another question before we roll. These are all the things that we need to know. I've never heard of Keyman. Okay. And only the normal business insurance places like Zurich. Once again, feel free to reach out to the vault, but not just the vault. You guys can contact any insurance provider and talk to them about that. Of course, you may not contact a lower end insurance provider, but we have dealt with athletes that have come through the vault. Excuse us. That literally have Lloyd's of London insurance on their legs because they're athletes. And clearly, their legs are something that moves most sports around, most athletes around. So they contacted the Lloyd's of London. You can contact banks, once again, that have agents inside of them, and feel free to ask them those questions. We do have partners on the private side that are more focused on just Keyman Insurance, but it is one of those things that you all can feel free to research. And once again, and call around to different insurance companies. Ask them, do they provide Keyman? If they don't, you can just hang up the phone. And if you want to continue that conversation, just one more second, you just say, hey, do you know of any insurance companies that do? Since you don't provide it, do you have a friend that's in the insurance industry that does provide that? That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about you doing your due diligence as the leader, the alpha of your family, and of your business. Bottom line, period. This channel is traditionally made for entrepreneurs, but as well, employees can benefit from that information. Why? Because it's not about savings, it's about protection. People have families, and if you have a family, you can protect the wealth that are you generating every single day. Because every dollar that you don't protect is losing value every second. That's a fact. Oh, people want to go in, oh, the dollar's losing value. Okay, thanks, Sherlock. Thanks for letting us know the obvious. It is losing value. But how do you protect the value of what you're earning? How do you preserve your labor? Gold, silver, insurance, collectible art, collectible jewelry. Things that don't go to zero. Is real estate going to go to zero? Probably not. Real estate won't go to zero because they're willing to sell it in a tax lien sale. So assets are always going to be protected. If people try to say there's no such thing as money and paper has no value or paper is minimal value and it's losing value, put yourself in more of a corrected family position. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Kansas City, shout out to you all. Thank you all for listening live. Feel free to contact your agents. Feel free to ask them about Keyman. Feel free to ask them about cross-purchase agreements if you all have multiple partners inside of the company. So somebody's now coming out of pocket to pay off a family from the company. Feel free to do all of those things and so much more. Appreciate you all. We're always going to keep bringing episodes to you all. This is a pretty busy week, July. We got a lot of earnings reports coming through for major corporations right now, and we're going to continue talking about that. We got a bunch of episodes we got lined up for you all at the vault, so stay tuned, subscribe, and just feel free to listen and share with your friends and family and build your family estate so we all can see you all on the beaches of the world.